Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, and I hope all of you are having a fabulous Wednesday as you get ready for what may be a great weekend. I feel like it's almost the weekend every time I do a show on Wednesday because I've already been up for so long. I've already done 3 different shows. I'd encourage you to go download Outkick the Coverage and also subscribe to Outkick the Show on iTunes. We blew through 1 million downloads in a month, which is the most downloads we have ever had. That's a big number, a number that most people will never hit in the sports arena. And so I thank you guys for all of your support of Outkick and making us grow as fast as we possibly can. Bit of housekeeping news as we get started here. I want to say Outkick the Show presented by Oddshark. Go to Oddshark for all of your gambling and informational related needs. Bit of housekeeping news. If you are listening to this, I am bringing all advertising back to me. That is, I will now control every single dollar that is spent as part of an advertising product for Outkick. I don't know that anybody else has ever done this before, but I am taking all ad dollars back, all ad control over this show, obviously. And you guys know that we have several advertisers lined up. I hope you sponsor them. I'm taking all ad control over this show. And I'm also taking all ad control back over for Outkick the Coverage, my website as well. So the end result here is that I will now make all decisions about products that are allowed to advertise on our sites. If you are interested in advertising your product on the site, you can reach out to me, and we're going to be bringing in people to handle ad sales more frequently. But this is pretty awesome. Big deal for Outkick. I think it's going to lead to us growing a lot. Our rates are substantial for the audience that we provide, not very substantial. So anyway, it's pretty cool. We are becoming, again, one of the largest independent multimedia networks that I'm aware of. That's Facebook Live, that's Periscope, that is podcast, that is all of Outkick the Coverage, the website, and that is pretty awesome. So everything will be in-house. It will all be decided by me. I want to do that because I've noticed that we've started to advertise sometimes for companies that are competing with each other. And that's fine when you're just doing kind of programmatic ad buying. But I'm kind of changing the template here. My belief is that we only want to have like 9 or 10 products that are allowed to be affiliated with Outkick. And I want to look at those products. I want to review all of our ads, and I want to make the decisions about which products we're associated with. And frankly, I'm going to give product exclusivity. If you come to me and you say, I am a fast food restaurant and I want to advertise with you, well, I want you to buy for a year. I want you to buy for a year, but I won't sell to any of your competitors, for instance. If you're an alcohol brand, if you are any company out there, I want to give product exclusivity to you. I've noticed that we sometimes are running ads for companies that advertise contra to the companies that are advertising on here and on Outkick, and I don't think that makes sense. So what I'm trying to provide is a strong partnership with 9 or 10 different brands. It's unique. I don't know how many other companies do this, but I'm saying if I take your money, I won't take your competitors' money. Moreover, I will also murder your competitors. If you know anything about me at all, it's that not only will I endorse products that are willing to be connected to my brand that we think makes sense, but I will also destroy your competitors. Some people, you just get endorsements. You also get destruction from me. So if you are a brand and you want to not only reach our millions of readers, viewers, and listeners every month and every year, then not only will you get the opportunity to reach our audience, you tell me who you hate, and I will murder them for you. I'm a trained assassin. I'm not only offering endorsements, I'm offering murders. So I don't know if anybody else has ever done this before. I will not only destroy your competition, I will endorse your product. You can also just pay me to destroy your competition and be anonymous. And I'll say, this advertisement brought to us by an anonymous advertiser who just wants me to murder how bad this brand is. I'm happy to do that too. Airline, whatever it is, I'm offering category exclusivity. I think this is a pretty big deal. I haven't heard anybody else doing this. You're going to be connected to me. You're going to be connected to my brand, and I will murder your rivals. This seems like a pretty good plan. If you like that idea, I'm easy to reach, claytravis@gmail.com. And again, we're only going to do like 9 or 10 different brands. I'm not going to do more than that. So It's a big deal. We're revamping the website as well. All of that is going to matter. I will take over again, since I am Claydoff Titler. I will take over all control of the Outkick brand, and I will control all advertising as well. So if you want to be associated with me or with our brand and our millions of viewers, you got to come to me. Okay, speaking of money, I want to talk. One of the things that I like to do on this show regularly is point out what I think is really flawed coverage. And in the wake of Nick Saban getting $11 million, there was, I thought, a really bad response, which is immediately, if Nick Saban had given his raise that he got for being Nick Saban and being the best at what he does to all the players. I saw tweets out like Alabama's players, every individual one of them could have gotten like $40,000 on the football team. And that's an intriguing concept, but I think that when we talk about this debate, a lot of times debates I think are dumb. And the way that you classify a debate often leads to superficiality of the debate. People criticize me and say, Clay Travis, clickbaiter. I think most people who read the site or listen to this show know that by and large, we dive deeper on subjects than just about anybody else in the media. So I want to make you smarter about paying players. Okay, let's talk about this in general. Every college is obligated under Title IX to provide roughly equal scholarship numbers to the men and the women who attend that school. That is, if you are a college, you have to have, and I'm not sure what the exact formula is, but roughly it's even, but it has to correspond to whatever your student body enrollment is. So if you were, for instance, and this makes sense, an all-male college, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and get a bunch of scholarships to women, but if you are a co-ed institution that is either has women and men, you have to give an equal number of scholarships to women as you do to men under Title IX. This obviously becomes a big, interesting battle because there are 85 scholarships that go to men as part of football. Those 85 scholarships then have to go to women as well to make it up and make it even, all right? So this is pretty fascinating, okay? Let's think about this in a larger context. So often when you hear people talk about sports, they say, why are these poor football players not making more money? Why are these men's basketball players not making more money? Everybody focuses on this aspect of those sports. The reality is this, all right? I want you to think on a large scale. So I gave you a little bit of a Title IX background. The only two sports that make money at colleges are football and men's basketball. Every other sport just about loses money. I think the UConn women and the University of Tennessee women might be profitable by a very tiny margin. They're the only women's sports that make any money at all, the two most popular in all of America, the UConn women and the Tennessee women. I'm not sure that's still the case, but it has been the case in past years, and it's a scintilla of money. They make a little bit of money. So effectively, what happens with all the money that is made from men's football, obviously, and men's basketball? The revenue-producing sports take the money that they make and they provide it to the rest of the athletic department to subsidize scholarships for all of the students who are attending the university on scholarship who play other sports. That is men's soccer, baseball, women's tennis. Every other athlete you see on a college campus who does not play men's football or men's basketball is subsidizing everybody else, okay? It's communism. It's not a business, all right? Everybody else who doesn't have the same marketable talents as football players and men's basketball players, they are using the excess money that they produce to fund all the scholarships for every other different team that competes that otherwise is losing money. Why does that matter? It matters because everybody out there who makes the argument, we should pay the players, is really making a false argument. It's an unintelligent argument. It's one that I would encourage everybody watching or listening to this to carry forward in the future. Thank you. Had to sneeze. To carry forward in the future, you need to understand something simple. If you pay football players and you pay men's basketball players, then you would be obligated to give the same thing to every scholarship student on the entire campus, which would bankrupt every athletic department in the country. Okay? That's why you can't pay the players. I never hear anybody make this basic economic explanation, which I think is important. You hear lots of people say, oh, you should pay the players. And you hear lots of other people say, oh, you should not pay the players. I never hear anybody say what is the very foundation of this, which is you cannot afford to pay the players unless you're willing to pay all the players, which is why these stipends are so tiny. So when you hear somebody out there saying, oh, well, they can do so-and-so, but they can't pay the players, the response you should have is, do you think that a women's swimmer deserves $30,000 extra a year? Do you think that a men's track athlete deserves $30,000 extra a year? Because under Title IX, every scholarship student athlete has to be treated the exact same. So I understand the argument that you think players should be paid, but you need to think of the players as a larger construct. You need to think of the players representing every student athlete who is attending a university. Football players and men's basketball players represent a small percentage of the overall student athletes that attend that school. Legally right now, if you are going to give a football player an extra $30,000 a year, you would also have to give a women's volleyball player an extra $30,000 a year. All right? Be more intelligent about this debate. Now, if you want to argue, as I have argued before, that there needs to be a delineation and a difference between football and men's basketball and every other sport in college, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Because I think that a market-based solution would be revenue-producing sports are treated differently than non-revenue producing sports. But then you get into all of the difficulties associated with this fact. All people care about is men's sports. And all people typically care about, by and large across the country, is football and men's basketball. So all the people out there who are screaming gender equity and gender equality, are they really recognizing that the only reason why gender equality exists is because football and men's basketball make so much money that they could subsidize every other sport, including all the women's sports? And remember, this also hits men's sports because it means that women's softball players get full rides often at many universities across the country. Men's baseball players do not, which is why there are only, I believe, 8 scholarships to go for all of the different universities across the board when it comes to baseball, because they can't give the same number of scholarships because football counts for 85. Now, this leads me to an interesting argument that somebody made. I would love to see this argued in court, that football is not really a men's sport, that it's just a sport that men happen to be better in, and technically, women are entitled to compete for football spots just like men are. And that if that's the true, then it isn't, football is being classified as a men's sport, but it's not a men's sport. Technically, if a woman was great at quarterback, she could play football, right? There is no women's football. I would love to see that outcome. I would love to see that argument made in court. Men are just better at football than women are, and that's why they get all the scholarships. Okay, the point is pretty straightforward. I'll answer your questions now, but if you were one of the people out there who has ever participated, and I'm sure just about every single person watching or listening to this right now has, if you have ever participated in an argument about whether or not there is the college athlete should be paid, I bet nobody has ever brought up the point that if one college athlete is paid, every college athlete has to be paid according to Title IX. Again, if the university is providing additional money, then it has to provide additional money to everybody, which is not something that I ever see brought up on any kind of intelligent discussion about the pay for play. And it always happens every time a coach makes a new amount of money or whenever an athletic department releases its overall revenue. The other thing I would like for you to keep in mind is this. Most of the time, the revenue that is being produced for athletics is revenue neutral at best, or the college athletic departments are losing money. That is, it's not as if these college athletic departments are making a lot of money. Most of them are actually losing money. And as a result, this argument that there's tons of money out there that they could otherwise be spending on the players is not true. It's just not true. Now, I argued yesterday, and I continue to argue, that a lot of this stuff would go away if you allowed football players at the age of 18 or 19 or 20 or whatever age they want to go pro. That would be fantastic. I would love to see that actually happen, because then I think the argument of, oh, these guys are not being paid, the morality of it disappears. If you can go straight pro whenever you want, then you have a bargain for exchange. You can choose to go get an education and go to college, or you can go pro. And that's why I think that the difficulty that football has, for instance, is because they insist that everybody go for 3 years. That's not an NCAA rule. That's an NFL rule that Maurice Clarett and Mike Williams both tried to challenge. I think it's a broken rule. And the example I always use of this is, you probably heard me use it before, Marcus Lattimore. After his freshman year at South Carolina, Marcus Lattimore was ready to go pro. I saw him run 40 times for 200 yards against Florida. He put South Carolina into the SEC title game. Comes back his sophomore year, tears up one knee. Comes back his junior year, tears up the other knee. He should have had the opportunity to go pro after his freshman year. He was good enough. Didn't have to go pro, and he's an exception, right? He's a young guy who was ready to go pro, but he should have been able to go pro if he so desired. If he didn't get drafted or if his career didn't pan out, he could always go back to college. What should happen is what happens in baseball. If you decide to go pro at 18 in baseball, you could advance it to 19 or 20 in college. Every single school should offer you, once you accept a scholarship to play football, regardless of how many years you're there, they should give you a full ride for the rest of your life. That should be the truth. If you are 18 years old, you accept the scholarship to football, and you decide to go pro at 20 before you can leave, then that school should guarantee you a scholarship for the rest of your life. Even if you don't succeed at football later, you can go back to school, you can get your degree. Maybe you can even work with the football team. Can't play, but you can potentially work with the football team, go into coaching, try to be a GA, whatever you wanted to do. A lot of schools do things like that already, but to me, that is a way that would really solve a lot of the issues that currently exist in college. And by the way, in basketball, you should be able to go pro straight through at 18, which would eliminate the one and done thing. The other aspect of this that it would help is it would really eliminate the idea of improper benefits and take away a lot of the responsibility of the NCAA when it came to checking to see whether or not guys are getting cars, whether they're getting free meals, everything else, because you wouldn't have an artificial underground economy. The artificial underground economy exists because at 18, if you're an NBA player, but you can't go to the NBA, you go to college, and you're getting paid by a sneaker company or you're getting fronted money by an agent while you're still in college. Same thing happens with college football, even crazier though, because you have to stay there for 3 years. So that is my belief. That's my way to solve this. I think this is a story that doesn't get enough attention. Everybody just argues pay or don't pay, pay or don't play. Well, you get a free education. Well, that's not a free market. All these different things. I'm saying you need to elevate the conversation. You need to elevate the conversation into the actual complexities that surround it. If you believe that athletes should be paid, the key word there is athletes. It means all college athletes, not just one or two sports. If you believe that football players deserve more money, then what you're also saying is that women divers deserve more money, or that male track athletes, everybody on scholarship would get the same amount of money. And most of the schools in the country, in fact, almost all of them, could not afford it. Okay. Won't the overall quality of college football decline if elite players go to the NFL? Doesn't that happen already? I think college football is so popular that it wouldn't matter. I don't think very many guys would be able to go pro at 18, 19, or 20. But if you could, you should have that right. I believe in a market-based economy. I think you should be able to sell your labor for as much money as you possibly can. And if you have the ability to sell your labor for the best possible market at 19, I don't think you should have to wait till you're 21 and have your career ruined in a physical setting like Marcus Lattimore did. I believe, in a meritocracy. Football is the ultimate meritocracy. Sports are a meritocracy. People always say, well, who's going pro at 18? Why do you care? Why do you care? If a guy can go pro at 18 and get drafted, then he should be able to do it. I don't think very many guys would. But certainly after 1 year of college, certainly at the running back position and probably at corner, there are enough guys that could go pro and would be drafted at a high level. This is always, why do you care? It's always my immediate response. Why do you care if a guy goes pro at 18 and he fails? You don't care if a guy takes a gun and goes and walks in Iraq and gets shot. We let guys go into the Marines and go all over the world and get shot at, and people are like, well, that's their choice. You're not okay with making a decision to let those guys go and try to make a living as a pro. We're totally fine with it happening in hockey, baseball. We're totally fine with it happening in swimming, golf, music, movies. Like, go try to make a living. Period. No doubt. Go let it happen. It's not a dangerous gig in the grand scheme of things. So far as I know, nobody has died playing football at a young age. They might die later. Nobody has died playing basketball. We let 18-year-olds get shot all over this world on behalf of America, and nobody says, oh, you can't go be in the Marines at 18. In the 60s, we drafted all these poor kids, put them in the jungle, and had them walk around with a machine gun getting shot at by the Viet Cong. Nobody was like, oh, they're 18. This isn't fair. Life's not fair. Sometimes people make bad decisions. But guess what? Kobe Bryant went straight pro at 18. LeBron James went straight pro at 18. Kevin Garnett, Amari Stoudemire, Tracy McGrady. Tons of guys have gone pro straight to basketball at 18 and been really successful. I don't know how good Marcus Lattimore would have been at 19 or 20 in the NFL, but I bet it's better than getting his knee torn up for no money at South Carolina in his sophomore year and then getting his knee torn up again in his junior year. It's a period. Again, why do you care? It's not your decision. It's a decision of a GM and a coach and an individual player and an owner. If he's got a market value and you want to sign him, let it happen. In soccer, 18-year-olds get signed all the time and they don't play very much. And they get better and better and they train full-time to be better. Maybe Leonard Fournette at 19 decides he doesn't want to come back to LSU for 2 more years. And he goes to the NFL and he basically works as an apprentice for 2 years. And then at 21, he comes on the field and he's a total badass. Maybe he decides he wants to stay at LSU for 3 years. That's his right. But me personally, if I can make money off my talents and I know that at any moment of any game, my talents can disappear forever, then more power to me. I'm going to go get paid. And the analogy I always make, and I've said it for a long time on the radio, you might have heard it before, is this. I get paid a lot of money to do radio now and write and do these shows. If you told me right now that I was going to get paid $20 million next year to do exactly what I do now, okay, $20 million guaranteed to do exactly what I do now, I would sit out for a year. If you also told me that there was a 5% chance that I could have a serious injury that would not allow me, or a 10% chance, or whatever the math is, that would not allow me to play for that year and that might impact my ability to ever earn that $20 million again, I would take a year off and say, peace, ride off into the sunset for a year, and in a year you'd see me back here and I'd make $20 million. Whatever you do, if you are a roofer, if you are a Uber driver, if you are a doctor, if you are a lawyer, the vast majority of people in America, if they were told they could make $20 million next year, but in the meantime they could lose all of their income forever because of an injury, would anybody work? That's an easy analogy to draw. It's also an easy analogy to draw for why I would never play in a bowl game and why, frankly, if I knew I was a top 10 pick after my sophomore year, I might sit out for a year. Just the truth. And again, if you put it in your own economic self-interest, think about if you were advising your kids. If you don't have any kids, think about if you were advising yourself or your buddy or your sister or somebody else. That's totally the position that I would be in. Big time win for the Preds last night. I didn't go. I was already in bed by the time that game ended. Preds now up 3-1 on the Blues. Stanley Cup Western Conference Finals look like they're coming to Nashville. Go download the SeatGeek app and buy some of those tickets in advance. Going to be a pretty cool environment. Nashville, I think downtown, is one of the most entertaining places in the entire country to go out and have a good time. That is going to be fantastic. 10 p.m. too late? Yeah, it was too late for me. That game didn't start till 8:30 my time, 9:30 Eastern, and then I get up at 4 a.m. You want me to be on the ball and be fantastic? Got to happen. Had to stay up. And questions about any of my, what would be the impact of college athletes marketing themselves? I'm not sure how that would work with Title IX either. I'm not sure how it would work with Title IX if individual athletes could market themselves. First of all, if individual athletes could market themselves, it's not much different than just allowing boosters to pay athletes, right? Because then all of a sudden, if I wanted to get a great recruit to go to the University of Tennessee, I could be like, hey, individual stud 5-star athlete, Outkick is going to give you $100,000 to go to the University of Tennessee. All I will ask for you in exchange is that you wear Outkick gear everywhere you go on campus, and that every interview that you conduct as a member of the University of Tennessee, you close your interview by saying DBAP, hashtag DBAP, right? And that you tweet links to my articles and everything else. Just think about what that would mean. If I could sign an endorsement deal, how is that different? If an individual athletes can sign endorsement deals, how is that different than boosters paying players? Because most boosters have companies or access to large sums of cash. So then what you would have is like every individual restaurant at Auburn, Alabama would be sponsoring players. And they would have players show up to eat meals. And I just think that's a mess. Again, I just think that's a mess. I think the way to solve it is to allow guys to go directly pro and give them the opportunity to go pro if they want. But individual marketing deals is really just a way to pay players. And if you want to pay players, that changes everything. Legally pay players, then again, Outkick would go out and sign a bunch of guys and say, not only will we pay you, but I've got a huge marketing opportunity. You can write articles for Outkick. We'll put them in front of millions of people. In addition to your games themselves, you can develop as a personality. We'll sponsor your Twitter feed. You can do a daily Periscope and Facebook Live with us. All these things would happen. And the individual players would be out there trying to sell. I mean, it'd probably be great for me, but I think it's a really bad idea to let individual players make decisions about marketing themselves. I think the better decision is if you think you're good enough to go pro, then go pro. Otherwise, you're signing a deal and you get a college education for free and you get to play a sport while you're doing it. That's the truth. This North Korea thing, any other questions? It's a good question. What would happen to Kentucky basketball if players could go straight to the league? They'd still be good. But instead of making money to play basketball for Kentucky through the shoe companies and everything else that's going on, they would go to the NBA and make a lot more money. And Kentucky would have to recruit guys who are not ready to be one and done, who are not probably top 20 players. And I think there would be more recruitment of guys who are going to stay for 3 or 4 years because there'd be less, like right off the top, the number one and done players would disappear. So I think that would make a difference. Any additional questions? College basketball would be even more boring then? I don't know. I actually think college basketball would be better if they had the baseball rule. If I were Grand Poobah of college and NBA, and again, it's an NBA rule about the age. If I were Grand Poobah of the NBA and college, and also just sports in general, I would use the Major League Baseball rule. I would say if you want to go to the NBA at 18 years old, you can go to the NBA. And in fact, I would allow players to put their name in and go through the draft process just like they do in Major League Baseball. So you know exactly what your value is, and then you decide whether or not you want to sign a contract and go to the NBA or go to college. But if you go to college, then you go to college for 3 years before you leave, and then you go back into the draft after 3 years, just like Major League Baseball does with college baseball. I think that would make it much better. Because I think the biggest problem that college basketball has is nobody knows the players. The best players come in, you don't even know them until February. They play for like 2 months, and then they're gone, and you got to relearn the entire process all over again. So I would follow the baseball model. You go in, and you want to go pro at 18, you can put your name in the draft, you can see where you get drafted, you can negotiate, decide whether to go. If you don't go pro, then you go to college and you stay there for 3 years. And then you can leave after 3 years and go pro again. I think that's the best possible system. Other than football, because I think the risk of injury in football is a lot different than the risk of injury in every other sport. To me, football, the risk of injury is so significant that if you want to go pro at any year in football, I think you should be able to go pro. I don't think you should have to wait till 3 years after your college graduates. Your high school class graduates. I think you should be able to go pro immediately in football. You can go at 18, or you can go, which hardly anybody would be able to do, or you can go at any year afterwards when you feel like you're eligible to be drafted. I would also say this. If you put your name into the draft and you don't get drafted after your freshman or sophomore year, I think you should be able to go back to college and continue to play there. Like, I don't like this idea of if you decide to make yourself available for the draft. I think baseball's got it right. Because you put yourself into the draft, you see whether you get drafted, you see exactly how much value you have, you see even which team drafted you. And then you make a decision about that or going to play in college. I think that would make a lot of sense in the NBA. I think it would make total, absolute sense. Okay, I don't know if you guys saw this. I think it's a big story. It hasn't been getting very much attention. But China, according to a report, has told all of its citizens to leave North Korea because it fears imminent attack by the United States. Whoa. Never happened before in the history of Chinese and North Korean relations. I don't know what exactly is going on behind the scenes, but that story is the top story on Drudge Report right now. Again, there is a report that China has told its citizens to leave North Korea for fear of what might be coming here, and that has never happened before in the history of geopolitical relations. And I'm reading this, again, I got the link off the Drudge Report. China urges citizens in North Korea to return home. The Chinese embassy in North Korea has advised Korean Chinese residents to return home amid concern the North's military provocations may trigger a U.S. attack. The embassy began sending the message on April 20th, and it's never happened before. The station cited a Korean Chinese living in the North's capital, said he left for China late last month after the embassy contacted him. He said he's been visiting China every 2 to 3 months, but after being told he should, quote, stay in China for a while, left North Korea a month early. The embassy has never given that warning in the history of North Korean-Chinese relations. I was worried and left the country in a hurry. That is a wow story. That is a total mess. Now, I said this on the show a while ago. If we could get Kim Jong-un out of control in North Korea, bang, it would be just like the wall coming down in East and West Germany. We would create a large democratic capitalistic economy in Asia that would be a trading asset of the United States. The United Koreas would become a blockbuster asset to the world at large. And this is the most amazing thing about it. Donald Trump would deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. Not kidding about this. If he could get Kim Jong-un out at a small loss of life and free all of those North Koreans who are living under a totalitarian dictatorship, reconnect the Koreas who remain in a state of war, do away with the demilitarized zone, and basically turn the DMZ into a modern-day Berlin Wall coming down, Donald Trump would deserve the Nobel Prize. I don't know if he can pull it off. In fact, I would certainly believe that he probably not, but it would be an amazing outcome to see happen. You could also give the award to China's leader, and it would be a great moment for U.S.-Sino relations. I don't know if it can happen, but it would be an extraordinary statement. It would make the world much safer, and it would be a fantastic result. So pay attention to the ongoing drama in North Korea. I appreciate all of you coming in and hanging out. A few more questions, and then I will bounce because I got to go pick up my kids at school. Tear down this terrible DMZ. Amen. And yes, look, I mean, partly it's the timing, everything else. I think North Korea, now the downside is, how do you attack North Korea? How do you avoid substantial issues? How do you avoid them just relinquishing control basically of all their weapons? Do you worry about terrorists ending up with some control of their massive missiles and potential nuclear armaments? Yes, all those things are true. Could millions of people die? Yes, which is why this is such a total powder keg, and why, again, I'm telling you the big news about China telling its citizens to leave North Korea as things continue to get worse. Twitter doing work. Amen. Making a lot of money on Twitter of late. Thanks to everybody out there who has followed us, and hopefully that run will continue. NBA picks. I am on the Raptors +7 and the good old Houston Rockets +5 or 5.5. I love all of you. Thank you for spending your time with me. Our NBA picks are now 27-13 on the year. That's a winning percentage of, I believe, right around 68%. I love you, all of you, and I will see you tomorrow. 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, fun show coming tomorrow on Outkick the Coverage. If you didn't listen, go subscribe on iTunes. We found out that one of the producers for Outkick was the kid from the movie Liar, Liar. Flat out unbelievable revelation, and it was a lot of fun. I don't have derby picks. I don't know horse racing. I only give you gambling picks when I'm confident in what the outcome's going to be. Love you guys. I will see you tomorrow. #DBAP. I'm Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show, presented by OddsShark. Go to OddsShark for all of your gambling and informational related needs.